Hey everybody, I'm insanely nervous to be up here, but you all seem very friendly. I'm going to talk about blurry, pixelated, unformatted medical data and tell a little bit of a love story. I am not a doctor, and I just want to make that a caveat because I'm going to talk about medical things, but I am not a doctor. I'm a designer, an illustrator, a journalist, and a coder. I've done a lot of work for The New Yorker, making data visualizations, but with much smaller data sets than anything you guys are used to. I would love to partner with all of you and help you make your data visualizations more beautiful and readable and understandable to the public, because the work that people in this room do is just mind-boggling and amazing, and I would love to, help make that beautiful. I make ridiculous graphics for a website called McSweeney's. So I started a column called Graphic Dispatches from a recent college grad still living in a college town. And that was about that moment when you graduate from college, but you still live in the college town that you graduate in, and you're no longer a student anymore. So I made these kind of ridiculous visualizations, like about how when you travel further from campus, the Wi-Fi networks start to change. From things like Frat or Die to, Norm Miller's wireless Ethernet guest, and it's locked, or something like that. And then when I moved to New York, I started this other column for McSweeney's called Graphic Dispatches from a New Yorker. And it was basically about this. I went to school in Indiana, and so it was about this contrast between the Midwest and New York, and how it's very telling. There are these subtle differences between the people in the Midwest and New York. For example, you can always tell when people are not from New York, they're the ones standing on the curb when they're waiting to cross the street. And I make more serious graphics with data, like I said, for places like The New Yorker. This graphic on the left was about a month of city bike data, and the graphic on the right, you may have seen, was about kind of mapping inequality across New York City subway systems. The idea being, if you started on, say, the 6 train, which maybe a lot of you took to get here today, and you started in Lower Manhattan, and you rode the 6 train from top to bottom all the way to the Bronx, what would that look like if you were to map income levels on that? So, you start out basically somewhere in the mid 100,000 range, and you end up, when you get to the top of the Bronx, people are making less than maybe $40,000 a year. So some might call these data visualizations. Basically, we're taking humble shapes like circles and squares and lines and dots, changing their position, adding color, and adding context. And data visualization, as most people in this room know, gives form to data. It gives context and form to data so you can understand it. And for the subway visualization, I start out with a bunch of very rough sketches. I always carry a notebook in my back pocket, and so I'm kind of always thinking about this. And my wife is an urban planning student at Pratt. And so together we're always talking about, much to the chagrin of our roommates who like to talk about other things that are more inspiring than data and urban planning. But we're talking about things like income inequality, or what would that look like on the subway, and how can we map these? So these are some of my early sketches for that New Yorker graphic. And then I learned how to use a QGIS mapping program, which I'm sure the people from Staten Island are like, QGIS, oh my gosh, that's so low rent compared to the stuff we're using. But hey, you got to work with what you're given. And then there are some mess ups where things don't quite go as planned. But in general, this idea of giving form to data and making it understandable to people, this is what the 6 train graph actually looks like. So at 77th Street, according to the census, the median household income in the census tract that the subway station entrance lives in is about $168,000 a year. And then if you go about 5 stops right before you get into the Bronx, at 125th Street, so 40 or 50 blocks later, the median household income is about $15,000 a year. And so you're looking at maybe a couple miles. And this is just a very basic line graph that I think makes a really powerful point. and is super, super simple. But when you think about it, the concept is quite interesting. And so we did this for every subway line. The lowest point on the train was actually the Sutter Avenue L stop, where people, median household income is about $12,000 a year. And the highest is down around Wall Street, right off the Fulton Avenue stop. No surprise. But really, data visualization helps you make sense of things, gives context to data. And this is what I do. I make charts to try to explain things to people in a journalism context, whereas a lot of people who make charts for academic settings make those charts, they get published into reports, and they're shared by other academics or in studies. I try and make charts that the general public could understand. But what happens when this data and these charts that people make, like for me, hits really, really close to home? Just gonna grab some water. So these two numbers are numbers that I really didn't know what they meant or what their context was when I heard them. 3B was the stage of my mother's colon cancer. 46% was the chance that she was going to live. And after we went through this, she's fine now, but I made a chart to try and make sense of it. This happened in 2008, ironically on my brother's birthday. My dad called and said, you know, we just went to the doctor. You know, we found out that my mom has colon cancer, and you know, this is what we have to do. And so I didn't really know what to do. I was in college. I was very confused, and so I drove back home to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and basically hung out with my family for a while. We got through it together, and my mom's okay now. But a couple years later, 2 years later, I made this chart that ran in our college newspaper because I figured a lot of people had this kind of same experience. You get this news, you don't know what to do, you feel completely helpless. And so this is what I do, right? I make charts and I try and explain things. So that's what I tried to do with this chart about my mom. She went through 576 hours of chemo. She had 3 different surgeries, and she's good now. She's been good for a couple years. You know, and in the end, it all hinges on a visualization, this thing called a PET scan, where they run you through a machine and they check your body for cancer. And her PET scan came back clear. But this idea that visualization is how we explain things to people and how things get understood. And we are surrounded by this data, and data visualization is everywhere, especially on phones and apps, but so much so in the medical field and in hospital records. And after my mom was done with colon cancer, I graduated from college, I got married, and I moved to New York, the big city. And on September 26, 2012, my wife, she's right up there. It's my wife, Erin. That's our dog, Thomas. September 26th, she wasn't feeling that great. She had been tired. We moved to New York in August. We live with 3 other people, some of our really good friends from college, and rent's expensive. She just started grad school, but she was feeling really, really tired. And we thought, well, we should just, go to the doctor. She chalked it up to being a new grad student in New York and just feeling tired all the time. So we went to the doctor, and they did a blood test. So the paper on the left is the blood test that they did, and the paper on the right is just a zoomed-in version of that blood test with the stuff added that I highlighted. And this is a typical thing that you get from a doctor. The doctor told her probably she had some sort of cold, and to really not worry about anything. But there were these 4 things in this abnormal results summary that I actually had never seen or looked at until I started to pull materials together for this talk. And then on March 1st, 2013, our 1-year anniversary of marriage, she had surgery on her neck. She had a lump in her neck that had been there for maybe about 2 years, and it got a little bit bigger, it got a little bit smaller. She went to an ENT, and the ENT gave her steroids to control it. The lump got smaller, got bigger, got smaller, and then the ENT didn't feel comfortable anymore. He said, let's just take it out. they went in, they cut her neck right here, it's just a little scar, and they pulled out this enlarged lymph node. So we're thinking, okay, no big deal, lymph node's gone, she's going to start feeling better, maybe she has some imbalance, her ears were feeling weird, that kind of thing. About 2 weeks later, again, lightning never strikes twice, but my mom got cancer, and then my wife got cancer. She had classical Hodgkin's lymphoma, so regular Hodgkin's disease, most people call it. And we weren't expecting this at all. The doctor did surgery, pulled the lump out, said everything looked fine, that kind of thing. And we thought, on your way home, he said, well, we have to do this thing called a biopsy. We cut it open, we check it out. They cut it open, they found lymphoma inside her neck. And so after that, you start doing stuff like this, right? You start Googling, and you go down Google rabbit holes. Because at this point, all you want is information, and the doctor only has so much information they can give you. Could we just go back one slide, please? The paper on the left and the zoomed-in version on the right, that's the diagnosis, so the official diagnosis and the form that they give you at the hospital. And then you start, like I said, doing this kind of thing. And at this point, you're clinging to every piece of information you have. There's this weird holding pattern between the point at which someone tells you or tells your spouse that they have cancer and the point at which you actually know how bad it is. That point, for us, was about 2 weeks. And that's like the worst 2 weeks of anybody's life, because you really have no idea how bad things are going to actually be. So, we Googled around, we called doctor friends. One of my roommate's dad's friends did a PR campaign for Lance Armstrong's doctor, and so we sent him Aaron's results, and he said, I can't look at these, I don't deal with this kind of cancer, but I appreciate, you looking at me in that high esteem. But at this point, right, you're clinging to every piece of information you can, and you just want things to tell people so that you're going to feel okay. And so we ended up going to, and anyway, you get all this information, even if it's presented in the worst possible way, right? So the thing on the left is another blood test. The thing in the middle is an EKG. The thing on the right is a PET scan diagnosis. And these are papers that you get. And this is our folder that we have at home that says doctor on it. That was quite thin when we started this process. But now it's filled with EKGs and bills and blood tests and PET scan results and that kind of thing. But this is the information that you're clinging to. And as a designer, this is insanely frustrating. On top of being sick, and on top of not feeling good, and on top of having to deal with cancer, you have to deal with shitty design. So that 2-week period where we're going through things like second opinions, we originally went down to Park Slope Medicine. That's where her ENT was. Then we went to Methodist Hospital, and then we went to, because everyone said you should go to Sloan Kettering, so we went to Sloan Kettering and got an opinion from Sloan Kettering. We ended up going to a Chinese medicine man on the Lower East Side. We went to his apartment. He put Erin down on a massage table. He told her to put her shoes on, and he started shaking her feet. And he did this for about 20 minutes, and then he started grabbing these magnets and putting them all over her body. And I'm sitting there trying not to laugh, because I have no idea what the hell is happening. And eventually, after she had magnets all over her and he had been shaking her feet for about 20 minutes, he sat her feet